Alright, so if you didn't read the description today, I said I'm going to be going through the strings challenges, which are these are the ones from my blog. I'll just bring up the page now. Yeah, the email alert thing is broken. I think the stream actually says that it's yeah, the stream name is okay, but the email alert is a bit broken. So we're going to be going through these challenges today. I'm going to do strings 1 to 3. If you don't know what these do, I'll just go through them quickly. So the idea is you run it and it will output an MD5 hash of the flag. And the aim is to get the original flag, which computes to this hash. They all do the same thing. And because we know that they actually output an MD5, what we're going to look for is if like what goes into the MD5 hash functions. Questions in the end? No, you can ask questions at any point during the stream, and I'll answer when I get a chance. So I'm just gonna I'm gonna open up strings 1 quickly. So if you didn't kind of figure, the name strings is a reference to the tool called strings. Thanks for the sub, Luch. It's a Linux tool, but there is actually a Windows version, and you run it on an executable, and it will dump all of the strings within that format. It's kind of like the standard for your reverse engineer starting off. Like I'd go to the IDA version, which is view open sub view strings, and I'd go through the strings. But the idea of these challenges is they're supposed to make using the strings tool complicated. Like in this case, we've got 1 million flags in here, and none of them are the correct flags. So we need to find out like which of these is the correct flag. Because there is only one, and there's 1 million in here. So the idea is we can't use strings because that's not going to help. So we have to actually do some reversing. Now this one is very, very easy. It's just kind of an example. You can actually see the MD5 hash function here. So the first parameter, well, the only parameter of this function is going to be the flag which needs to be hashed. It's going to come out in the EAX register, which is the return pointer, which is going to go into the LP text parameter of the message box, which will display our hashed flag. So what's going into MD5 hash, we can see it's the EAX, and what's set into the EAX here in the MOV instruction is offset 432294. So if we double click this, we have our flag here, which is flag, can I make it any more obvious? And just to check that's the real flag, we can go to here and put it in here, correct flag. So that one is really, really easy. And the second one should be a little bit harder. So we're going to go over to the second one. Same kind of format, it's an MD5 hash. Here we can see again the MD5 hash function, but this time we haven't got any offset. And if I actually go into strings, this is what would show up in the strings output. So we actually don't have anything of use to do with the flag. It's just some exports and some DLLs. So how do we get this one? Well, if we look again at the MD5 hash function, the EAX is the only parameter, and we're loading the address of EAX with the load effective address instruction here. So we're setting the EAX to be the address of this, EBP plus var28, which is up here. So that's going to read downwards, which is all of this. So this is actually a technique called string stacking. And the idea is instead of embedding the strings in our binary, what we do is we build them manually byte by byte on the stack. So we're going to set the first offset to byte 46, next offset to 4C, 41, and so on. We actually don't have to do this in order. We could set the first offset here and then the 8th offset here. It doesn't really matter, but just for simplicity, I've done it in order. So we need to know what all these hex values are. And we could go to a hex to ASCII converter and convert each of the hex values, but that would be long and boring. So there's actually a trick to do this in IDA. It's the R key. And that will just convert our hex to a character. And we can actually do this in mass by, if we just select all of these, we select all of these, hit the R key, and then here we get an option to set it. So we want to set the, I believe the all operand should work, and then the lower value is the minimum value to convert. What's the objective? The objective is to get the string here that's being made on the stack. So this is the lower value. So this is basically says what is the minimum value we should try to convert. So we expect all of these characters to be in the ASCII range. So we could say set the lowest value to the lowest ASCII character and the upper value to the highest ASCII character. But because we know they are all already in the ASCII range, we can just convert everything, which is lower value of 0, 0 and upper value of FF. Oh god, that didn't work. What is it? It's one of these. Give me a sec. This seems to only work when I did it in the test. All right, I didn't set the operand value ranges. There we go. So it's converted every single one of these, and we can see our flag is flag stack strings are the best strings. And there's actually no real good way that I'm aware of to, I did not pray to the demo gods, that is very clear. So there is actually no good way that I'm aware of in IDA to actually extract this value. If someone does know a way, I'd love to know it. So I'm just going to write it out. So it's flag stack strings are best strings. And providing I haven't typoed that, if we go into strings 2, correct flag. So now on to strings 3, which is the last one. Okay, so this one is a little bit more complicated, and you're going to have to look up some Windows API calls if you're not a Windows malware analyst. So again, we have our MD5 hash, and this time the setup is a bit different because I actually compiled it differently. So the buffer is going in is the EAX again, but we're loading the, this is actually the class pointer. It shouldn't be in here. It was a compile error. It's supposed to optimize this out, but just kind of ignore it. So what we're looking for is the flag that's going into here. So the first thing it's doing is find resource A. What is find resource A? So there's a beautiful resource for this called the MSDN documentations, which actually does do a quite good job at documenting things. So find resource determines the location of a resource within this with the specific type and name in the specific module. So what this is actually going to do is load the resource segment, and we're going to load resource name rc.rc. So once we've got a handle to our resource segment, we're going to call this, which is load string A. So again, we can look this up. Again in MSDN. And it loads a string resource from the executable file associated with a specific module. So what we're doing is we're getting a handle to the resource section, and then we're loading a string from that resource. So what string are we loading? Well, if we look at the parameters here, we've got a H instance, which is the handle to the resource. Then we've got our uint, which is the ID of the string to be loaded. So that's the string, the ID of the string in the resource, which is what we need. Then here we've got the LP buffer, which is the output buffer, which is obviously this. So what we want here is the UID. So EBP plus UID. It's being set to EAX. The EAX register is, it should be zeroed somewhere or loaded. Here we go. So we've set the EAX to 1. And then we're shifting left the EAX register 8 places. So if you're actually not good at bit math, there's a good trick you can do with this. If you open up the Windows calculator, click the view, and then go to programmer mode, we can actually mirror these operations. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start with these two. So we're going to set our EAX to 1. Then we're going to shift it left 8 places. So that is the left shift thing here, LSH, 8 places. which is 256. Then here it's XORing the EDX with itself, which sets it to 0. So the EDX is 0. Then it's being incremented, which will set it to 1. So we know the EDX is being set to 1. So if we open up another calculator for the EDX register, set it to 1. And then we can see that the EDX is being shifted left 4 places. So if we left shift out 4 places, we've got 16. And it's doing an OR operation. OR is essentially an add in this case. So it will add the EAX and the EDX. So we're just going to go to our first one and then add 16. And the answer is 272. So IDA is actually awful when it comes to resources. So I'm going to use pExplorer for this part. We open the file in pExplorer. And then we go to the resource viewer. We can see our list of strings. So these are here on the left side is the ID of the string, and on the right side is obviously the string. So if we remember our number here, it's 272. We need to find ID 272. There we go. 272. Flag resources are popular for malware. Yes, the stream will be recorded. I'll be uploading it on YouTube as well. So if we go back to my blog, providing this is still in the cache, it is not. Go to strings 3. Put our flag in. Correct flag. So that's strings. The last thing I'm going to kind of say on this one is this method of storing stuff in the resources is very popular in malware. With encrypted or packed executables, they will often store the encrypted or packed executable in, you can actually name it anything. In this case, it's rc.rc, but you could put it as anything. It would load the packed or encrypted executable from the resource with find resource. It would do something like load bytes, not load string, because it's not a string, and then it would decrypt it and run it. So looking for resources, which are binary data, is a pretty good way to see if the malware is carrying a payload. All right, now for something completely different. I did promise I'd do a slightly more advanced stream, so I'm going to lead straight on to the advanced one, which is going to be dynamic analysis doing Python breakpoints. So just to start off with, I'm going to show you what we're going to be looking at. So don't actually worry if you don't know C or C++. This is just kind of just a quick way to introduce you to the applications. You don't actually need to understand this part, but it might be helpful if people who are C++ programmers are watching this. So this is basically a small application I wrote, which gets, we have a multi-dimensional array here. So what it's going to do is it's going to write this value on the left side of the array to the file name on the right side, but it's going to encrypt it. So if you look here, it's iterating the array here, and then it's setting the data pointer, which is the data to encrypt, and the file name, and then calling write encrypted file. Yeah, I will hopefully be doing some simple malware reversing. I've just got to actually find some simple malware. That's like one of the big problems I'm having is everything I'm looking at right now is like super, super advanced. So I'm just going to try and like write basically simple samples for you to reverse along with until I can find like something simple. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to encrypt each of these strings and it's going to save it to each of these files with this write encrypted file function. So let's look at the write encrypted file function. What it's doing is it's encrypting, it's using crypt encrypt, which is a Windows API, and it's actually commonly used in ransomware mostly. It allows for RSA and AES encryption, as well as a few more, but RSA and AES are the two common ones used in ransomware. So the first parameter is the key. Then here we have the buffer to encrypt. So this is our data that will be encrypted. and then the out size is the output size, and it will be encrypted in place. So we'll put here, we are copying the data into the encrypted buffer. So we copy in our unencrypted data, then when we call crypt encrypt, it will be actually encrypted in the same buffer that we put it in. So we're encrypting it into the encrypted buffer, and then we're writing it to our file. So let's say we wanted to get the unencrypted data before it's encrypted. So how would we go about doing that? Well, if we open up encrypted files, where is it? So I'm going to just run it through as an example. WinDebug. Thanks for this sub, Dr. Metasploit. So we've just run it through, and we can see it's written 6 encrypted files, and these are the files we want the text for. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the imports and see where it's calling encrypted file from. Encrypt. So to do that in IDA, we do a right click on the name and then go to jump to xrefs to operand, which is basically going to say, hey, give me a list of everything that references this function. And we can see it's only actually called in one place, which is this. Now this is, if you remember from the source, this is actually this function, the write encrypted file function. This is what it looks like in assembly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a script command window, switch it to Python mode, and we're going to look at how we could programmatically actually get the data before it's encrypted. So I'm going to set a breakpoint in our write encrypted file function and then run the application again. Here we go. So if we look at the stack, which is ESP, we're going to have a couple of D words on the stack, including our file name here and our text here. So we're going to get these from Python, which I'm going to bring up a cheat sheet for. Right. So the first useful one will be to read a string from memory. We're going to want both of these strings, the file name and the data, to be encrypted before it actually gets encrypted, which is when our breakpoint is hit. So I'm going to just move the IDA window to the side and collapse this a little bit. Right. So the first function we're going to need is get string to get our string. So we write get string, and then the first parameter is the address of the string. So we're going to start with, let's start with the file name, because that's the first text parameter, which it says here it's at offset C, but because this is relative to the EBP, which is set after we've pushed something else to the stack, we're going to be using the ESP, which means we need to subtract each of these offsets by 4. So in order to read the stack pointer, we need to read the value of the ESP register, which is get reg value. So get reg value, and then we put in ESP. We can actually run this just to show how it works. In the console, if we switch it to Python mode, and then we call get reg value ESP, it is the ESP. Now this is actually in decimal. If we want to put it in hex, we just wrap it with the Python's hex function, and we can see that that value here matches the ESP register. So get reg value ESP. Now we want the file name, which is, as I said, it's -4 from this, so it's going to be ESP plus 8. So ESP plus 8, we run it again, wrap it in hex, and there is the address of the first parameter. If we jump to that in IDA, which a quick way to do this, Control G, G, and then you can paste your address in and jump to it. So here is the address of the file name, but we actually want the text from the file name, which means we need to read its address. So that is our read D word from memory. We're going to read this D word here, which means wrapping this in the D word function, which will read the value at ESP plus 8. Again, if we can't actually do hex with this. I know actually we can do hex. And then if we go to our address, there is our text. So we're going to go get string around this. Then the second parameter is the length. Sorry, where are we? Here, the length. Except with C strings is they are null terminated. The last byte is a 0 byte. So we can actually set it to -1, which says read until the very last byte, or to the null byte, which will automatically get our length. And then finally, it's an ASCII string, so we set it to ASC str C. And if all goes right, when we run this, it should work, providing I've actually matched the brackets properly, which I don't think. No, I have done. No, I haven't. ESP. There's something wrong here. God damn it. Oh, there we go. I just typoed it. So here we can see it's output the one.txt, which is our file name. So we're going to set the file name to that. Next is the text, which is basically the exact same deal, except we're +4 from this offset, so it's going to be ESP plus C. So we can just copy the whole line, set it to, I know, text data, and then set it to C. So we're going to read the string at EBP plus C, which, if we run here, is the hello world. We want to output it nicely, so let's do a formatted print. Let's just do string : string. And then file name first, and text data next. Just make sure that works. Line 5, oh, yeah. So there we go. It's going to print out the name of the file and then what the text that will be encrypted and put into it is. So now what we want to do is run this for every call to this function, which is where Python breakpoints come in. So we're going to replace this breakpoint with a Python one. So in order to do that, we need to wrap this into a function. So let's just call it something uncreative like breakpoint. And then because the way IDA works is it doesn't update the memory during the code running, only when you're broken, like I am now. So we actually need to call refresh debugger memory every time our breakpoint is called. So if we run this, we now have a Python function called breakpoint, which if we run, gives us our file name and our string name. So now all we need to do is set a breakpoint. We can actually do this programmatically, but we don't particularly need to. So what I'm going to do is try and edit this one here, set the condition. You need to actually, you can't paste it in here. You have to go to the ... part and then select Python and then set breakpoint. And then if I run it again, here we go. It has output the names of the text. I'll open a new notepad window for this. Yeah, I'll upload the cheat sheet as well. In fact, I'll upload the source as well, I think. So then if we go back to our source code, we can see this matches our array here. It's actually backwards, but whatever. And we have successfully gotten all of the data before it was encrypted with a Python breakpoint. So these are actually pretty useful. There's actually a little trick I'll show you before we finish up. And that is, if you want a breakpoint to actually break to the debugger, you return true. So we'll actually just remove this because we don't need this anymore. So we'll just set a breakpoint that returns true. Let's print something as well. So it's going to print hello world and return true every time our breakpoint is called. So we set this to our breakpoint. It's actually still set, but let's pretend. And then we stop, we run that, and it's going to say hello world, and it's going to break. Now, if we return false, it will actually still run the breakpoint, but it won't break the debugger. It will just continue going. So if we do the same again, notice it didn't break this time. So we can actually choose whether the breakpoint actually breaks to us or if it just runs the code and continues going, which is pretty damn useful. So any questions so far? Memory leak on line 31? No, no memory leaks. It's Python. Python doesn't leak, my friend. IDA version, oh, in the original program. Yeah, it's not supposed to be perfect. It's just an example. What version of IDA? I believe this one is 6.8, and then my free version is 7.0. Do I get real use from this? What do you mean? Can you do it in Cutter? I don't actually know if Radari has good plugin support for Python. I've not tried it, but I would hope you can. But oh yeah, the in this case, like the example with the encrypted file is just kind of an example I made because it's an easy way to demonstrate the technique. But it's more the idea of just setting Python breakpoints can be incredibly useful. I'll upload a cheat sheet now, actually. Just grab it from the documents. See if that works. How to access the hcrypt key structure from IDAPython. It's basically the same thing. Is you just can read the dword values from it. If it was a word value, you would just do the same. You do the word function with your address in here. There's also byte and qword. So it is really just to read memory. You use these three. So we got the byte function, we got our word function, our dword function, and if you want to read more data than that, we've actually got our get many bytes function, which will will read an entire byte array, starting at address and finishing at length number of bytes. So I'm going to see if the cheat sheet actually worked. I don't even remember what I called it. Is it RTF? Nope. Oh, it's case sensitive. There you go. So the cheat sheet is up here at this this URL if you want to download it. So yeah, which VM do I use? Do you mean VM software? That is that's VMware I'm actually using here. I don't know if you can, you can see the bar. Yeah, so the idea behind Python breakpoints is like this specific use case isn't very useful, but I've used it in the past. I use it on Dridex to basically transparently decrypt the strings. Like I found the decrypt function, and instead of reverse engineering the function to find out how to decrypt the strings myself, I just let the Dridex binary run, and then I used my Python breakpoint to pull the decrypted strings out of memory. Is Python support built into IDA? It's actually, yeah, it's built in since like I think version 5 or something. Like it's a really old feature, but it's probably the most underrated feature of IDA. I'm gonna actually upload encrypted. I'm gonna upload all of this. Give me a sec. What should I call it? Have I reversed malware compiled with VB6? I actually haven't. I kind of tend to avoid to go with anything non-native because native's kind of my strong point. So I stick to mostly C and C++ stuff, or assembly, of course. Okay, so the source for encrypted 1 is going to be a restream restream1.zip. Just check it works. There we go. So there's your download URL for the cheat sheet, and then there's the download URL for the encrypted 1 example. VB6 compiles to native. It actually depends. VB6 can compile to an intermediate language, or you have something called like P code and native. P code is basically an intermediate language, and then native is, it does compile to assembly, but it's like a huge mess. And it will be constantly like referencing calls from the VB runtime DLL. It's not that hard to reverse. It's just no one writes decent malware in Visual Basic. So if it's Visual Basic, it's automatically something I don't actually want to look at. So I tend to skip that. How do you do debugging / breakpoints on actual dangerous malware? So what I do is obviously run it in a VM for a start. Make sure your VM is completely isolated from your home network. So I'm going to see if the settings nah, it doesn't capture the settings overlay. But basically, you can set it to completely isolate it from your home network. If you're really paranoid, actually do your reversing on a completely separate machine. Don't run VMware on your PC you use for your banking and your gaming or whatever. Run it on an entirely separate machine on a completely separate network. There should be no communication possible between your host machine and your reversing machine. So would you start vlogging? No, absolutely not. No one wants to hear about my life. It's boring. Yeah, so like generally, if you can, you should avoid running malware at all. You should just do static analysis, but that's very slow and it's not practical. You can gain things a lot quicker by running the malware and setting breakpoints. Is anyone else having problems downloading cheatsheet.rtf? Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. The C is capital. I should probably change that. Sorry, I'm an idiot. What got me into malware analysis? I don't actually know. I've always been a programmer. Like I've been programming since I was about 12. But I remember one day, I think someone had sent like it was like back in the days when people would bind malware with legitimate applications and upload them on forums. And someone had uploaded this amazing software for free. And I thought to myself, hang on a minute, like they're posting this for free on a forum. It's not an official download link. There's probably something in this. So because I actually already knew how to program in assembly, I just needed to figure out like what a disassembler was. So I went and I searched how to look inside applications, and I believe I came across Ollie debug. So I opened it up in Ollie debug. I had a quick look, and it was very obvious. Straight at the entry point, there's a jump to their malicious code, which runs, I think it was ProRat or some really old Trojan. It would run their ProRat and then run the legitimate application. And I thought that was quite a fun little task. Like I should maybe keep doing this. So I actually later on I ended up starting malwaretech.com, which is where I started blogging basically blogging as I went through my malware analysis, kind of mostly as notes for me, but as teaching also for other people, and kind of got started there. Could you use Flare's stack strings plugin? Yes, you could. That's actually quite a good plugin. I can't remember what Flare even stands for, but FireEye's Flare toolkit is incredibly good. Is Oracle VM VirtualBox a good VM program? Yes, it actually is. If you can't afford VMware, Oracle VirtualBox is definitely your best option. So for approaching learning malware analysis, I already knew Windows internals, so it wasn't really a step for me. It was kind of, I was a programmer, I knew assembly, I knew Windows internals. All malware analysis for me was basically learning how to use the tools like IDA, hex editors. So I didn't really actually learn, which is why I don't have any good tips for those who are looking to get into it. It's kind of why I'm doing this. It's a lot easier for me to just teach the things that rather than trying to find like books or whatever to tell you to go read, because I didn't actually read any reversing books. Um, yeah, actually, I am planning to upload the source code for the flags challenges towards the end. I didn't want to upload them now because then it would kind of encourage people to cheat, and it's just more fun if you don't have the source code. Because I know, like with me, I'll get stuck and I'll be like, maybe I'll have a little peek in the source code. Whereas if I don't have it at all, I can't do that. So I will upload it. I do kind of intend to wait until afterwards. Like I'll upload the strings ones now, seeming as I've already shown you how to do them all. But for the rest, I'll wait until I do the streams based on those. So like the plan right now is I'm gonna do maybe a weekly or bi-weekly reversing stream, and I'm gonna start off by running through some of the malware tech challenges from here. I've got some more I need to upload, but for now we've just got these up here. So I'm going to run through a couple of these at the start of each stream, then go on to something a little more advanced. Like in this case, it was Python breakpoints. In other cases, it will be something else. If you have a suggestion for what you'd like me to cover at the end of the next stream, I can take that suggestion. Do I have any recommendations for Nix-based reversing, or do I only know Windows-based? So I do a little bit of Linux stuff. It is once you've got the assembly and once you're familiar with the tools, it's pretty much the same thing. It's uh, it's just the call interface is a little different. With Linux, you have either interrupts or syscalls, whereas Windows, you have like a huge set of libraries. So it's not that much difference on the assembly level, just the call interface takes a bit of looking into. What did you learn to understand Windows internals? I spent a long time reverse engineering the Windows operating system itself, and that's kind of where I learned it. I just enjoyed messing about and making the kernel do things it shouldn't. So I just basically would open the Windows kernel or Windows libraries in IDA and just start digging. And that's how I got around to most of the internals. And then the rest I learned from looking at malware. You'd see it calling some kind of obscure function you'd never seen before, and you'd be like, oh, I wonder what this is. And internals are actually a little bit harder. So if we take the internal, what's a good example? Trying to think of one that isn't documented. So if we search NT write virtual memory and go to the MSDN page, it's actually hidden because they don't want you playing around with the internal functions. So when it comes to actual looking at undocumented internals like NT write virtual memory, undocumented.nt internals is one of your best friends. It's basically documenting all of the functions Microsoft don't want you to mess with. Um, there's a couple of these. Like you just basically just Google and click down Google until you find something that kind of it gives you enough information. One of my favorites is ReactOS, which, if you don't know, is basically an open source Windows clone, which is on GitHub. You can just open ReactOS on GitHub, and you can actually see the source code to the internals functions. They basically reverse engineered all of the Windows internals and sort of rewritten the source code in C, so you can see how they actually work internally, which is pretty useful. Agent Tesla could be a fun thing to do on stream. Maybe, but it is like I'm not a fan of .NET reverse engineering, but I guess people need to learn that, so I don't see why not. Do I have any tutorials on how to set up a VM for analyzing malware? I actually do. If I remember where on the blog it is. So I've got creating a simple free malware analysis environment. I'll put these in the link bin. Actually, I can spam them all in the chat in a minute. So this basically, it gives you what you need to understand. Yeah, ReactOS is reverse engineered malware. Sorry, reverse engineered Windows, and like how to pick your hypervisor, like what decisions go into this, picking your guest OS, setting up the virtual machine, installing Windows, the environment setup. Then I've got a second article. I think this one's quite far back actually. I might have to search it. Do I even have a search box? Oh, cool. I removed the search box. That's a great plan. There we go. The other one is the creating the ultimate Tor virtual network, and this is basically an article for how to route all of your VM traffic through Tor. It also shows you how to isolate your VMs, so malware running in a VM can't talk to other VMs or interact with your host OS, which is obviously a good idea because if you're running an SMB server on your network and you're running WannaCry in a VM, that's probably not going to go too great for you. So it'll teach you how to basically route all of your VM traffic through Tor, which will stop your malware from finding your real IP and isolation of VMs. It's a pretty quick article using pfSense, so I'll put that in the link bin as well. I'm just going to spam all these in the chat quickly so no one has to actually OCR or write them out. Any advice on modern VM Protect? Honestly, I don't think VM Protect has changed that much. I think really you just need to understand how to devirtualize virtualization-based protection. I think you just basically look at one of the older VM articles and you'll get a feel for what you're supposed to actually be like aiming towards. I don't know. I've not personally come across VM Protect in malware in probably about 5 years now. Back when Zeus was a thing, Zeus and Spy, I used it a lot. So I haven't actually looked at any new of the VM Protect. So I would definitely just go with the old article, or if you can find a newer one, look at that and then just apply the techniques to the new version. Yeah, the BSD packages on the new pfSense, they changed them for some reason. So you've actually, I think, if I remember correctly, someone put the command you have to use in the comments. There we go. So Bill Bob has, I don't think Op follows this anymore. He definitely does not follow this conversation, has definitely not read these comments. So Bill Bob actually tells you the new command to fix basically what they broke, which makes the article no longer work. Everything, like the rest of it, all works fine. Right, see if I missed any questions. Right. Right, so any more questions or any questions I missed, just spam them in the chat. I'll be uh, I'll be on till 12, I think. I am. As long as there's questions, I'll stay on. But I am planning to kind of stop the stream about 30 minutes early at 12 because I've got some things I need to do today, and I got through this a lot quicker than I expected. So, will I one day cover sinkholes? Yeah, actually. I do plan to do an article on botnet tracking. It'll be showing you how to write a botnet tracker for I'm deciding between Sality and Zero Access because both of those are really easy to write trackers for. So I'm gonna do a programming article where it will show you how to write your own botnet tracker. Do you use WinDebug? Yes, I do. WinDebug it's basically my backend for IDA. I use IDA for the UI and then WinDebug for the debugger. And then what you can do with IDA is you can switch between IDC, Python, and if the application is running, you can actually use your WinDebug commands here. So I could do ddesp, and I can send my commands through to WinDebugger as well as using the IDA interface. So that is for Windows. I definitely recommend if you're using IDA, use WinDebug as your backend. It's probably the most stable on Windows. GDB is okay, but it can get a bit tricky. Thanks for the attempted donation. I don't know if it's an error with the address, but I think it works. Like maybe just wait and try again. The recommended tools, I believe I use all of them actually. Yeah, so out of these, the only ones I don't use is I don't use x64 debug because IDA, because I have IDA Pro, IDA freeware doesn't do debugging, so you need a debugger with that. Whereas I have the Pro version, so instead of x64 debug and Oli debug or Radare 2, I will use my IDA Pro plus WinDebug as the debugger. I use all of these. I don't use Procmon, and I don't use Process Explorer because Process Hacker kind of does all of the stuff those do. I don't use user-most Process Dump because Process Dump is kind of my favorite. And then out of network tools, I only use Wireshark. I haven't used Fiddler or Mitten Proxy in a long time. Then I use all of these. Is IDA Pro a one-time payment? No, it's not. That's the thing I really hate about IDA is it's an enterprisey type license where you pay basically you don't buy it again every year, but you pay to keep your support. So if there's an update and you've bought IDA and there's an update more than a year after you bought it, you have to pay again to get the new version. So you're basically paying about the version I have is about 8,000 US dollars. So you're paying about 8,000 US dollars a year for this software, which is why I'm trying to bully Radare into becoming like the new IDA, because I want everyone to have a free software that's actually good. Like obviously, if you're learning to reverse engineer, you're not going to be able to afford $8,000 a year for reversing software. So I am trying to work on getting like a suitable alternative, but right now nothing actually hits the mark. Do I see malware written in Go? I've not personally seen any malware written in Go, but I have heard of it. It's actually quite easy to reverse because it compiles to native, but it's a stupid language for writing malware. Yeah, I answered that question earlier. The can I do basic malware reversing? Yeah, I'm looking for some basic malware that would be good for people to follow along with. Something that's not too not too dangerous and not too difficult to reverse. But the problem is right now I'm working on some like really extreme malware, and it's not the kind I could do on a stream. A, because I'm not allowed to share what I'm working on, and B, it's very difficult to reverse, so it wouldn't be good for beginners. But if anyone has any suggestions, for really basic malware that they want to see me reverse on stream, I will do that. If not, I'm thinking maybe TrickBot. It's a little tricky, but it might be a good start. And thanks, Blooch. What do I think of Binary Ninja? So Binary Ninja is really, when I have IDA Pro, it doesn't really have a space in my toolkit because everything IDA does, or everything Binary Ninja does, IDA can do and more. But it's a lot cheaper, and if you only need static analysis because it doesn't have debugging, I would actually say it's more intuitive than IDA. Like the layout is a lot easier to navigate than IDA. But it's not for me because unless it's going to add a debugger, I have no use for it. And no, I haven't tried Hopper, only Binary Ninja. Have I looked at the practical malware analysis stuff? I've scanned through the book. That is the one I recommend to beginners, but I've not actually read the whole book. I just scanned through it, and it is pretty good from what I've seen, but you'd have to ask someone who's read the whole thing. Yeah. Any more questions? While we do this, I'm actually going to show you the IDA licensing model, which is it makes people cry. See if I find the page that gives you a quote. I can't remember what this is. Oh, the quotation system. A license for one computer, $1,800 a year. And that's just for the base IDA. That doesn't give you anything. Like, let's say you need the x86 decompiler. That's another $2,600 a year. Oh, but wait, we need x64 as well, $3,900 a year. Oh, we want to do some ARM 32 and 64-bit, $3,900, $2,600. Then there's there's whether your license is floating, which kind of changes the price. If you want to use your IDA on Linux, you don't get that for free. You have to buy a whole entire version for Linux. So if you reverse on Linux and Windows, you're going to be spending about $30,000 a year on IDA. And stop talking about pirated IDA in the chat. It's illegal, guys. What do I recommend for beginners that want to get into InfoSec? That's kind of a broad question. Like, it depends really on what part of InfoSec you want to get into. Like, if you can go more specific, I can give you some tips. Do I ever do AppSec or pen testing? I don't really do either, but I do binary exploitation sometimes, but not formally as a career. I just do it for fun. Yeah, that's good advice for InfoSec beginners. You will probably hate computers, the internet, and every person in existence within a week of your career. Right, so I'm going to leave the stream running for 2 more minutes in case there's any more questions, then I'm going to head off for a bit. InfoSec on machine learning stuff, what does that mean? Yeah, I could show MEMS cleans, whatever that is. I'll take a look into that. Am I working for somebody? Right now, no, I'm not working because I don't have a work visa in the US, but I am employed by a company. Obviously, I can't work while I'm in the US, but I'm still with, well, at least I think I'm still with the same company I was before. For beginner malware analysis, what is worth buying? If you're a beginner, you can actually get really far with it completely just using free tools. VMware Player is free. VMware, no, not VMware. VirtualBox is free. Ollie Debug is free. There's a bunch of free hex editors. Radare is free. You can go to the top. You can be the best of the best with completely free tools. Just I like IDA because it has a lot of things other debuggers don't, and it speeds up reversing. But in terms of actually learning and getting the skills, you can use anything. Have I ever run across PHP binary exposed to the net? No, actually, I haven't. Any non-free software that provides student discounts? I think IDA might do a student discount. I believe VMware does. Binary Ninja also does, I think. Most professional software actually does provide student discounts, which is surprising. Have I looked into reversing Ethereum contracts? No, I haven't. How different is vulnerability hunting from malware analysis skill-wise? It depends on what you're hunting binaries in. If you're looking in source codes, then it's mostly a programming standpoint you're looking from. But if you're reversing binaries, then yeah, it's basically reverse engineering plus an understanding of how exploits work. So if you can program and you can reverse engineer and you want to do binary exploitation, then really all you need to do is understand the different classes of exploit and how to just kind of understand how to look for them and improve your ability on actually looking for them. There's a destructive version. Oh dear. How do you find a job doing malware analysis? Is this a generic question? Like how does a person go about that, or how did I specifically find my job? Oh god, base 64. The destructive one overwrites the MBR. Interesting. Alright, let's see what this does. Get a handle to physical drive 0. That is not something you want to see malware doing. That's bad. Memes. Okay, I see what. Yeah. So it's overwriting the master boot record. It creates a file named notes.txt, which it writes in some kind of. I'm guessing this is some kind of decryption. Uh, I think, yeah, it's decrypting some kind of text, writing it to notes.txt. Your computer has been fucked by the memes Trojan. Okay, yeah, I think we could definitely go through this quickly in a next stream. I've already pretty much gone through it, but I mean actually go through it slowly and explain what each part does. But yeah, I can see us doing this. Do I think I could write a virus like ransomware, but instead of paying with Bitcoin, they sell their soul to Satan? I could probably not do that. The FBI would be very upset. Where do I search for samples for like finding samples to analyze? I generally find them on Twitter. Like most of the really interesting stuff actually gets tweeted out. Like people who have no idea what they're looking at will like tweet out APT samples. You've got like people tracking all the latest botnets like Emotet, Dridex, TrickBot. You can find samples for whatever you want if you just follow a couple of malware reversers on Twitter. There's also, I believe it's called Virus Share or something, which is basically a free version of VirusTotal. There's like a couple of these. So there's virusshare.com. There is another one, but I don't remember the name of it. But it's basically like VirusTotal, but free. I also get some mine on VirusTotal if you hadn't figured. This will be a VOD. It automatically uploads it. VirusBay, that's the one. Yeah, the free one, beta.virusbay.io, which I will spam in the chat as well. Oh yeah, that's the other thing is on Twitter, people will find like, I want Twitter. How do I do hashtags? I think it's just that maybe? No. There we go. So there's a lot of people who do this and they'll just tweet out like samples, all kinds of shit. Go back to the hashtag. There you go. So there's people who they'll just find open like directories on C2 servers where you can basically see all the files that are hosted on the C2, and then they'll tweet it under the hashtag opendir, and that's basically all malware. You generally don't find very good malware that leaves their directories open, but even like some of the best will accidentally do that from time to time. I've seen Drydex forget like they misconfigured one of their C2s and they left their logs directory open, which meant you could go and download all of the malware's logs. What PC specs do you need to run VM on? I mean, you can probably get away with like 2 gig of RAM and a single core CPU, but obviously the more resources, the faster it is, the more VMs you can run, the better VM OS is. If you're really like struggling for money and you don't have a high-end PC, just throw up an XP VM, give it 500 megabytes to a gig of RAM. I think you can even with XP Service Pack 1, the 32-bit one, you can actually get that on a 256 megabyte RAM VM. So you're not really needing lots of resources, but me personally, I'm actually, I think this machine here, this Windows 7 VM, is running with 8 cores and 4 gigabytes of RAM. But obviously, like I have a ton of hardware, so you really don't need it, but it is handy if you're going to be like me, like pausing and resuming a bunch of VMs daily. Is there products that can prevent advanced malware? I mean, there's all kinds of like new age, next gen antiviruses, but at the end of the day, anything your antivirus can detect, like someone can write a way to go around that. There's no like one thing that's just going to pick up all advanced malware. When do you think it's better using decompiler than assembly? If you can afford the decompiler, I always just go straight into the decompiler and only go into the assembly if you really need to. Like for me, I'm a C++ programmer, so the IDA decompiler compiles to C, which makes it a lot faster for me to read. So I'll jump into the decompiler and then I'll go into assembly if I need to. But you shouldn't. You should learn not to focus on using the decompiler. You should be able to do both assembly and C. It just should be a helping hand if it's there. Have I ever played PS Doom? No, I haven't. What's my lab setup? So at home I had a pretty sweet lab setup. I'll see if I can find it actually. Where is it? Oh, more. So this is my home setup. It's this is home as in back in the UK, not my apartment in LA. So we've got our dual router slash switch firewall here. So this box up top is running two separate embedded routers. There's my clean net, which is blue. That's the home PC and all of the good traffic. Then there's the red net, which is bad, and that's the malware traffic, which is all routed out through Tor, and nothing on this network can interact with anything on the blue network. Then we've got our TP-Link switches, obviously a separate switch for the blue and the red network because we don't want them running some kind of TP-Link switch 0-day and then hopping out of the switch or out of the VLAN into the other VLAN. So I've got two completely separate switches, two completely separate firewalls, two completely separate routers, two completely separate lines. Then here's my NAS that's I believe 20 terabytes of Western Digital red NAS drives, which are kind of the most long lasting. And then below is my ESXi server, which is a Dell ProLiant DL, I think 8350, which can support up to 1.5 terabyte of RAM and dual Xeon CPUs. So you can have two 24-core CPUs in that. That runs all my VMs and it's only connected to the red network because that's where all the malware goes. My NAS is storage for my home network, and that's not actually connected to the red network. That's only home network. And then the ProLiant actually has its own inbuilt storage to stop it communicating with the NAS. Then here in LA, I just have a single computer, which is it has good hardware, but it's not really the biggest of show off setups. Is XP ISO free? Technically, I think the XP patent would have run out by now. So I'm not a lawyer, but I think you can actually legally pirate XP now. So I would not worry about paying for XP. In fact, you legally cannot buy an XP key because it would be reselling because Microsoft doesn't make them anymore. Advice for starting and reversing macOS malware. I've actually never looked at Mac malware, so I can't really give any advice for that one. When my Win 7 VM is better than your main computer. Yeah, well, to be honest, this VM would usually have about 1 gig of RAM max. It was just because I was doing a stream and I didn't want anything to go wrong. I just gave it a ton of resources. I was actually planning to do a video on my setup here, but I got stuck in the US before I could ever do a video on how it all works. I don't really have a list off the top of my head for books and blogs to recommend other than Practical Malware Analysis and I still forget the name of the rootkits book. It's something rootkits hiding in dark corners of the system. And other than that, just like follow me on Twitter, and I retweet a lot of the malware analysts, and then look at the people I kind of retweet regularly, and then look which ones of those are malware analysts and follow them. And within like a day, you'll have great content because most of the people I follow on Twitter tweet some really great content. Wait, how old am I? I'm 24 now. And what's happening with my case? I don't actually know. We're currently waiting on the judge ruling on whether or not to dismiss the case. So I've been waiting for about 2 months now, and depending on how she rules, we will either go forwards with the case or it will be dropped. So I'm basically waiting on that for about 2 months now. So it's a bit like it makes me very nervous, but there's nothing else I can do. Have I met Taylor Swift in real life? The real one or the InfoSec one? Fravia site for reversing. I'm not sure what that means. What's my favorite shit posting Twitter account? That's got to be Swift on security. Like, Their ship posting is so much better than anything I could ever imagine. Like the Cortana fan fiction is just that's way beyond my abilities as a ship poster. If the case gets dropped, will I go back to the UK? No, I actually really like LA, and I would, if the case is dropped, I would like to find a way to stay here. I would probably go back to the UK to kind of obviously reconnect with my family who I haven't seen since I got arrested. But I think ultimately I would like to just go back for a couple of months, grab my server rack, and then come back to the US. I do still ride a bike and I do still listen to Lana Del Rey. No, no one can ship the server to me because like the FBI are just they like to annoy me, and I know they will just seize it as evidence. So I'll never get that back if someone mails it to me. So it's better to wait until the case is over, else it will end up in like some FBI evidence locker for the rest of eternity, and that'll be $10,000 worth of hardware gone down the drain. And I mean, actually, to ship it, it wouldn't be that expensive compared to how much it would cost to buy the whole thing again. But I'm just worried it would get seized as evidence or something and I'd never see it again. Arch, Red Hat, or Debian? Definitely Debian. I'm a Debian guy. And yeah, the Swift on security plain persona stuff is just it tickles me every time. Like that account is so damn funny. No, I can't deal with Arch. Like, I am sure it's a good OS, but just the people who are constantly talking about how they use Arch just seem so damn pretentious. Yeah, I do have commitments, but it's not till 12:30, so I was going to cut the stream at 12, but as long as questions are still coming in, I'll set a hard limit at 12:30, which is when I said it will end, but I can actually stay until 12:30. The Arch memes, yeah, I've seen too many of those. And I've also seen the people who the memes are about who actually do that seriously. And I don't think I have the skills to install Gen 2. I think I'd get bored after trying to compile the kernel and it failing once. Elon Musk's shitposts are pretty good, I gotta say. No, if the case gets dropped, they can't seize any more of my stuff because there would be no case to seize it under. So once, like, if the case gets dropped, like once that has like gone through, I would then be able to mail my server to myself. Is this going to be a weekly thing? I'm planning to make it a weekly or at worst 2 weekly thing. It just depends on my schedule and how much time I have. Because like I want to set it Sunday 11 a.m. every week, but my schedule does shift around a little bit, and sometimes I'm just busy, and sometimes I don't have just sometimes I don't have anything to reverse or anything to talk about on stream. So I'll see how it goes, but yeah, I would like this to be a weekly thing. Is Windows Defender shit? So yeah, it is. The Defender I think it's ATP. The Enterprise one is actually incredibly good, but the free Windows one is. I mean, like if I go and I don't know if I actually have Windows Defender on here. I might have to switch over to my host machine. Give me a second. Oh, this is not my host machine, that's why. Yeah, I still do game streaming. The game streamings are like most days. They're not consistent. They're just randomly when we feel like gaming. But yeah, the game streams are still happening. Uh, let's see if I can find my PyCharm instance. All right, here we go. Let's try and remember how to actually set my desktop capture on. Okay. So here we have, not that one. So here we have a folder full of Emotet samples. All of these are malware. Every single one of them is an Emotet sample. And I'm going to right click. I'm going to select them all. Sure, there we go. Scan with Windows Defender. It found nothing. Every single one of those files is malware. And it has found absolutely none of them. And if we right click to see some of the ages, like this was October 12th, so that's 10 days old, and it hasn't found that. Like some of these I think are even older than that. We got yeah. So we got they're basically from all over like the past month, and it has not found a single one. So yeah, that's about how good Windows Defender on Windows 10 is. Any questions? No, there's no way to zoom into my desktop. I don't have zoom features right now. How has GDPR affected me since I got stuck here? So what I do to deal with GDPR is I basically decide to be an American company when it doesn't suit me. So I don't deal with GDPR. I just claim to be American because I technically am now. How much programming experience do I recommend to become a good malware analyst? It depends. You should be able to read assembly, but that's about it. You don't need to really know C and C++. It helps, but I wouldn't say you have to be like the top C++ programmer. I'd say just get a handle on reading assembly, and that's all you should need. Is there any rumors of my trial being made into a film? Like actually a few directors have asked me to sell my life rights, which I'm not selling. But I don't know if someone's going to try and make me into a movie against my wills, but they've definitely asked. What's Emotet? So Emotet is a really popular Trojan right now. It's probably one of the most active malware families around. They basically sell dropping services to criminals. So you will pay them some money and they will run whatever you want on the systems they've infected. So I've been tracking it for a while. I've been like looking at their samples, and that's my folder full of samples, which as you can see, Windows Defender has not picked up any of them. Um, I think Defender does actually have runtime protections, but they're equally as bad. The I don't remember, but I did hear they have behavior-based stuff in Defender, but I may be wrong. Where can you find malware samples? I put some links up in the chat somewhere for some places that store archives of malware. There's Virus Bay and Virus Share are two good ones. Android malware reversing. If you want to do mobile stuff, then yeah, that's a skill you should get. But personally, I don't bother with mobile, so I don't do Android reversing at all. Virus Bay and Virus Share, I believe. The links are somewhere in the chat. I can bring up the links window again. I don't actually know if I put them in here. No, I didn't. Oh well. They're up in the chat somewhere. Do I play CTFs occasionally? I never really have time for them, but yeah, I will do a CTF occasionally. Any special precautions when downloading samples? Yes. Do not download samples with active extension. So if it's an exe and you're on Windows, that's an active extension. You don't want to be downloading those at all on a system that you don't want to risk infecting. If the extension is exe and you're on Windows, download it from within your VM. Or if you use something like wget, grab the sample and rename it while you're downloading. So do something like I'm using Windows 7. Windows 10 does actually have wget, but you could do something like wget malware.com/malware .exe, and then you do the slash, I think it's out file, and then you could do something like malware.exe underscore, and then you're not at risk of actually running it. But this won't work on Windows 7 because Windows 7 doesn't have wget. It will work in PowerShell if you alias wget to whatever crap PowerShell uses. What is the current popular botnet? Is in like being sold on the underground, or like what's the most commonly seen botnet malware? And thanks, Nesnero. I could probably do with some IP ranges if you have any of those, but not right now. I'm kind of on a break. They say that if you're a good red teamer / attacker, you only then can you become a good malware analyst as you know where the attack is. I wouldn't say that's completely true. You can be a good malware analyst without understanding how to attack systems. But I would probably say the best malware analysts are the ones who like they know how to red team, how to write malware, how to do all that kind of stuff. Um, in terms of advice for SOC analysts looking to defend against malware, basically try and cultivate IOCs that are static. So if you can map out their C2 infrastructure and block them or alert on them at network level, that's very useful. Like for instance, Emotet actually downloads a list of C2s every couple of minutes. You can write a Python script to just download their list of C2s, and then you can just automatically alert on those. So whenever they send out a new list of C2s, you will have that list and you can alert on them. So it's mostly about understanding how each malware works, how they update their C2s, like how they update their binaries, and then you can kind of work to alert on those techniques. Uh, in terms of the underground, I don't really think there's anything super popular for sale right now. I think the one I most see is a Dreambot or ISFB. They're the same malware, just different names for it. That's a really common one. It's not good, but I think the kind of the days of people selling malware on the underground died out. It's mostly just script kiddies and all like the real kind of malware operations write their own malware rather than selling it to like general consumers. So I do think like the malware kind of sales days have died out. So I really wouldn't know if there's anything better than that for sale because I don't actually really follow the underground much. And a C2 is a command and control server. It's the server which sends the commands telling the malware what to do. The underground is in like the the kind of hidden hacker forums that are harder to get into. That's usually where most of the malware is sold, but it's really we are kind of past the days of malware being sold. If you look at all of the big things like TrickBot, Emotet, Dridex, all of those groups write their own malware. They don't sell or buy malware. They have their own kind of private code which they use. LokiBot is, I believe it was leaked. So yeah, that's quite a big one as well.